Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Holistic Approaches to Resilience for Changing Times with Dr. Richard Gold at the California Institute for Human Science, and more specifically at the Center for Lifelong Learning. So some of you may already know me, others may not. For those who don't know me, my name is Chiara Marapodi. I'm the director for the Center for Lifelong Learning, and I'm so excited to present this topic to you this evening, which I think is very pertinent. And we've been through quite a lot of dramatic changes over the last 15 months, and Dr. Gold and I decided it would be somewhat useful and it would be helpful to all of us and our community to discuss resilience and holistic approaches to that. So tonight you're going to be exploring the 5 pillars of resilience, and you will be provided with specific strategies to foster each of these pillars. It's a very exciting time at the center, and I'm very excited to have Dr. Gold back again. So Dr. Gold, welcome, and welcome to everybody, and the floor is yours.
Thank you so very much. It's always a pleasure to be here. Hi, everybody. Hope everybody's doing well. So I think it's important to establish a common ground of definition as we go forward with this subject. Clearly, as Jarvis said, resilience is always very important, but what we've been going through, and I'm afraid we're going to continue to go through, is to require resilience. And I think we need to be purposeful and intentional in this regard, and not just be hopeful. I mean, not to not be hopeful, but to recognize that we really need to apply ourselves in order to stay strong and to grow and to explore all of our possibilities during these times. So by definition, resilience is the capacity to recover quickly from difficulties, toughness, exhibiting toughness, and also flexibility. We sometimes always have to change course. This is the process of adapting well in the face of adversity, trauma, tragedy, threats, or significant sources of stress, such as family relationship and problems, serious health problems, workplace, financial stressors, and how about a global pandemic, just to throw things into a little bit more of a challenge for us. We're going to see that there are 5 pillars of resistance. Now, again, I want to establish a common ground of discussion of terminology. A lot of what I'm going to do tonight will be didactic and informational. There'll be some experiential, and certainly a lot of tips, I hope, to help foster your own ability to remain flexible and resilient and strong. So the 5 pillars are self-awareness. This is a conscious knowledge of your own character, your feelings and motives and desires, what really is at your own core. And a lot of this is going to come from mindfulness, which is focusing our awareness on the present moment, calmly acknowledging and accepting our own feelings, thoughts, and very importantly, bodily sensations. How does one feel? How do we react to the situations that we find ourselves in? Self-care is a very critical part of the pillars of resilience. We really need to take care of ourselves because in a lot of ways, no one else will. Positive relationships and community. We've really seen how important that is during this pandemic when there's been so much isolation, and how much we cherish the ability, whether it's in our own little pod that we've been able to establish, or now that our pods are growing outward, how refreshing and how vital this is to our sense of strength and our sense of well-being. And certainly purpose. Why do we get up in the morning? What is it that's driving us? What is it that's leading us? What is it that gives ourselves meaning? Now, there's 7 integral and interrelated components that make up being resilient. These are competence, being good at something, not necessarily everything, but certainly something that gives you meaning. And developing competence. We're not born necessarily with competence. It's something we learn and we develop. We need this confidence. We need to be able to feel step forward with strength. Again, connection, that we're part of something greater than just ourselves. The establishment of a firm sense of our own character so that we're not going to be buttressed by every changing wind and every changing circumstance. I think it's important that we all want to contribute something to our community, to our families, to the greater good. Coping skills, being flexible, being able to deal with the changes that we are faced with is always going to be important. and a sense of control, that we're not living in chaos. Now, control is certainly a variable, and it's not necessarily having things tied down in control, but if ability to feel like you can bring yourself back. And a lot of this is self-regulation that we can develop. We'll see through meditation is one of the great ways we can actually establish control, that we're not just being buttressed about. There's 7 skills that we often identify with resilience, which is we are, even though we're part of a greater whole, we also are competent and confident in being autonomous. We remain a realistic awareness of who we are, who our self is. Adaptable. This is very important. It's a part of the evolutionary development of our species, is our ability to adapt to changing environments, changing circumstances. Resilient people are going to remain optimistic and actually get a sense of possibilities, what awaits us by our efforts. At the same time, we're going to be pragmatic. We're going to not be up in the sky. We're also going to have our feet on the ground. Again, we're socially connected, and we demonstrate not just compassion to others, but compassion to ourselves. We learn to be patient with ourselves. Now, a lot of this is evolving, these ideas are evolving, and one of the important aspects of that is something we can call psychology of possibility. So much of our psychology practice is really unwinding the past, dealing with trauma, post-traumatic stress, things that have happened to us in our lives, which sadly aren't so good. And that's all valid. There's nothing I could say that would diminish the validity of that and the importance of delving into that. But when we talk about resilience, I think the psychology of possibility can become a very important landmark for us to build upon. And it first requires that we begin with the assumption that we don't know all of what we can do or what we can become. And rather starting from the status quo, psychology of possibilities argues for a starting point of what we would like to be, where we would like to see ourselves evolving into, the situations, the circumstances, the people we want to be with, all these things. And from the beginning, we want to ask how we might reach that goal. We want to set goals. We want to have determined specific steps of possibility as we make progress towards it. Now, this is a subtle change in thinking. It's not necessarily difficult to make this subtle change once we realize how stuck we are, how enculturated we are by language, by modes of thought, and our personal story. These all limit our potential. And becoming firmly aware of who we are gives us the idea of our launching point of where we can take ourselves to. And we can develop psychological resources and strengths. Now, what I'd like to do with this slide actually is invite you in your own homes now to speak out loud about these strengths. And what I'm going to ask is not to say, like it's written here, that we can be more resilient, but I want you to use the word you. Now, a lot of times with affirmations, we go, I can be more resilient, I can be less anxious and irritable. Some interesting recent research has shown that if we use the word you, we actually take this away from being so much an important part of our ego construct, and we have the more potential to embrace and embody these aspects. So please join me in your own voice that you can become more resilient. You can feel less anxious and irritable. You can feel less disappointment. You can be less frustrated. You can feel less lonely, and you can feel less resentment. I invite you to close your eyes for a moment and just let these thoughts sink in with each breath. You can be more resilient. Okay. A lot of interesting developments have occurred in recent years in neuroscience and the idea of neuroplasticity and the capacity to change. There's been just dramatic changes in recent times because of brain imaging, functional brain imaging, where we can actually see the brain functioning in real time. This is dramatic, and it's really changed neuroscience and the ideas of what our capacities and potentials are. So neuroplasticity is the ability of neural networks in the brain to change through growth and reorganization. Now, this is a real seismic change from the way we used to view the brain, where we saw the brain reach a certain place around age 25, and the idea of developing new neural pathways wasn't really considered possible. We know that that's a fallacy. It's a dangerous fallacy, an important fallacy to get over, because it was a dangerous trend to feel like you were stuck. It's interesting to note that when we're born, our brains have millions upon millions of neural connections. And as we enculturate, literally like neural pathways become embedded. It's sort of like a freeway system begins to develop, and we get deeper and deeper ruts that develop. But the important thing to understand is we have the capacity to change. We can create new networks in our brains. It takes effort, but that's a lot of what resilience is about, is determining what those efforts, what we want to achieve for ourselves. And these changes range from individual neural pathways, making new connections, to systematic adjustments like cortical remapping. Now, the cortical aspect, I'll show a slide in a couple of minutes, is this huge part of our brain that when we see a skull open, it's all this matter, convoluted. It has a surface area that's really hard to comprehend. And the neural pathways, the multitude of them is just mind-blowing and astounding. So with this remapping or reorganization, where a process by an existing cortical map is affected by a stimulus, resulting in the creating of a new cortical map. And the stimulus, it can be often just our own willing of creating new connections. And this initiates a mechanism of neural reorganization to eliminate neural structures that we want to be changed, behaviors that we want to change, constant pits that we find our mind falling into, where we just rerun the same stories over again that aren't really benefiting ourselves and our health. And every part of our body is connected in this way to this. And so as we change, if we change our movement, for instance, it's going to change our brain. If we change ideas in our brain, it can change the physiologic and structure of our whole being. So these cortical functions are well-defined areas, but recent data shows that it's more involved, that there's much broader connections in the brain for motor tasks and coding and memory. So it's extremely complex, but the idea here is that we have the capacity of this huge, beautiful cerebral cortex to create new pathways, build new roadways, new conduits. And as we create these new patterns, and as we can embed these ideas of possibility, of growth and development, and achieving much more of our evolutionary potential. So we're going to label this positive neuroplasticity. We want to turn passing experiences into lasting inner resources that actually are built into our brain. It's not just an idea. Again, this is a neural pathway that is developed, and we could do this by continually remodeling itself as we learn from new experiences and new thought patterns. By repeatedly stimulating a circuit in the brain, you can actually, I'm going to use strength in the brain, and actually this is creating these new neural pathways. We develop mental resources. We want to experience, we want to have, grow, and develop. An important one is gratitude. More and more research shows that if every day we begin the day with ideas of what we're grateful for, and at night when we go to sleep, we think about what we're grateful for, this has dramatic and lasting positive changes. We want to convert the passing experience to a lasting change. This is when the neural pathways begin to change, and the communication system through our whole being begins to change. An important aspect of this is to embody the experience and thought. Where do you feel, as you envision yourself in a better place, doing different things, having a better job or a position that you like, or relationships or activities that you want to do, you want to get a sense of how does it feel in your body? Because sometimes we can recreate the feeling on our body, and then the thought patterns will change. Remember, it's a loop. It's not a one-way linear thing. It's a biodynamic looping between body, mind, and spirit. And we have the capacity to interject at various levels for that. And it's essential to work the brain in a similar manner as you work a muscle, repeated, like I said, like with gratitude or confidence. We want to just get into you are grateful for this, you are grateful for that, and repeat it and repeat it, and it becomes something that your brain will reach for. You know, at a certain point, as you practice this, you don't have to say, oh, I want to say my gratitude prayers now or my gratitude thoughts. Your brain will reach for that because it has a positive feedback system within yourself. And we want to remember that lots of little efforts add up over time. It's not like you're going to start training for 10K and one day and then you're going to run it the next day. It's going to be developing over time. So we want to train. Changing your mind for the better means actually changing the physical brain for the better. Now, I just said a lot of this, and what we're going to say is repeated practice is critical. Now, I'm aware that I'm repeating myself, but I'm doing this because I'm seeking to provide suggestions for positive change for all of us. We want to convert passing experiences into lasting changes in our nervous system. This is a critical step of creating these new neural pathways. And there can be no lasting healing or growing without creating these new neural pathways. Again, we want to work the brain like we work a muscle over time. Lots of little efforts add up. Otherwise, we waste beneficial experiences and possibilities. We don't want to just have something positive and then it disappears. We want to begin to have it grow, have it grow. Starts from a seed, becomes a plant, and grows. Now, meditation is something that is showing itself to be an absolute rock star in the idea of neurogenesis. And I strongly encourage all of us to consider having a meditation practice if you don't already. Again, meditation is not an easy thing to do. Progress is very hard to measure sometimes, but little by little by little, it builds. And one of the biggest benefits of practicing meditation is promoting more positive thoughts and emotions that help you deal with the negative ones. Thoughts are going to come up, and we really learn through meditation to steer our mind in ways that are beneficial to us. When you're observing yourself morning after morning, your meditation, you're not going to want to get bogged down in negative thought loops. You're going to want to steer your brain. You're going to want to direct yourself in the direction of possibility and growth. So while meditating, we form new neural connections associated with positive feelings. Now, meditation is different than just relaxation. Nothing wrong with relaxation practices that relieve stress, but meditation was shown to actually change the brain and improve overall physical health. So nothing against relaxation. It's very important, as I'll mention a few times as we go along, but I really want to strongly encourage a daily meditation practice. And what research has shown with meditators and functional MRIs of the brain, the structure of the brain actually changes. It's quite dramatic, quite marvelous to observe and to even imagine this. We want to discuss some basic things so we understand who we are, what we want, and then how we can bring behaviors into our life, actions into our life to make the cause of positive change, to nourish the resilience we all seek to embody. Now, we can identify three basic human needs, and these are safety, satisfaction, and connection. And we have four major ways of meeting our basic needs. We seek to recognize what is true, what is our truth, how we resource ourselves. I'll go into detail about all these. We want to regulate our thoughts, feelings, and actions, and we want to relate skillfully to others and the wider world. So we can look at this in a graph form. And what we're going to do is we're going to go through together all the things. So in safety, we're going to look at compassion, grit, calm, and courage. We're going to look at all these. It's going to be cursory, but hopefully it'll spark some ideas for yourself. Also remember, as far as our talk tonight, Chiara will send all of you a link. So if you want to ever watch this again or get, again, to watch it to learn more, or so that you don't feel like, oh, what I forget, I don't really remember, you will have access to all this information, okay? So we're going to look at each of these one by one. So we have human needs and how we meet these basic needs. Compassion, mindfulness, and learning under recognizing. So compassion, this is a psychological resource, an inner strength. And it's an embracing of with an open heart and a warm heart, concern for the suffering of others and yourself. Now, Buddhist tradition take this to a much deeper level, and I think that's really important. But this level is certainly adequate. We want to have concern for the suffering of others. In the Buddhist, you actually want to feel the suffering of the others, and I think that's for a lot of that's a road too far to go. It's not wrong or anything, but if it's harder to actually have warm-hearted concern for ourselves often, but we want to have it for ourselves and for others. And we want to have a deep desire to relieve this suffering. Okay. Mindfulness. Mindfulness implies staying present in the moment as it is, moment to moment. This is a tremendous challenge. This is a great challenge in meditation always. And because our mind is easily distracted. It's like a cricket jumping around. It's just boom, 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 boom. Most of the time we're reliving the past or we're worrying about the future, when really all that is really real for us is in the moment to moment being of the beingness of our being. With intention, really focused intention and mindfulness and consistent practice. I can't define a word by its word. Whoop. With consistent practice, we become more mindful and have more mental discipline. Again, mindfulness, it's much harder to build mindfulness than it is a muscle. Again, we can't control all the thoughts that arise, but we can choose not to fall into the rabbit hole of those thoughts. And that's what happens with meditation. All of a sudden, you're just tripping out on something that has nothing to do with the reality of your day or who you are really in that moment. And what we do in meditation is we become aware that we're tripping out, that we're falling down a rabbit hole. And with gentleness, we pull ourselves back into the moment. We want to anchor ourselves. We anchor ourselves through breath, through mantra, whatever works for you, whatever maybe your teachers have helped you with. There's a lot of ways to anchor ourselves, but we want to use the anchor. So we pull ourselves out of this cycle of negative thoughts, fears, and anxieties. Learning. We all want to be lifelong learners, and that's what this whole program at CIHS is about. It's about lifelong learning. And this is acquiring new skills and knowledge through study, experience, and by being taught. And we acquire deepening and broadening mental resources through learning. And we seek to convert experiences into lasting changes in the neural structure of our minds and the functioning of our bodies. And we can't just assume, oh, I can learn. We want to learn. And this again takes practice. And what we can do is we can replace negative and harmful learnings as we learn. And a lot of this is through intentionality. And learning is an inner strength that helps nourish all the other resources that we bring to our being and our life. Okay, resource, and that's a lot to swallow. Let's just stick with me. I'll try to go slow enough so we can take, and if you just grab one idea that resonates with you, that's a dramatic and wonderful change. We're going to look at grit, gratitude, and confidence. Grit is very American in that we want to be tough and resourceful and dogged. We want to show courage and resolve and strength of character. And we want to really build in this sense that we can make things happen rather than just be helpless and things are always happening to us. And we want to display determination, tenacity, and patience. Gratitude. This is so critical. No matter what's going on, there's some goodness in our life. The fact that we're even thinking and we're breathing and alive, we can have gratitude for being alive itself. And as we show more gratitude, this helps foster more positive emotions. And with gratitude, it allows good experiences to deepen and broaden and become really part of our beingness. Gratitude actually is measurable in how it improves our health. When adversity arises, and it always can and always will, it helps us deal with it. And gratitude helps us build strong relationships with others, because one thing we can be grateful for is our connections, our families, our friends, our pods, our fellow students, the people in our life, our nation. Confidence. Confidence is the feeling of self-assurance arising from one's appreciation of our own abilities or qualities. We want to stop denigrating ourselves. When you find yourself in a loop of self-degradation, just stop. One thing I do when I get into loops like this, I just go cancel, cancel, cancel. I do that in meditation. I do it when I'm just in waking during the day. And it's remarkable for me how when I purposely want to cancel a negative thought loop, how it changes my mental focus. And with confidence, we have a feeling or belief that we can rely on someone or something to help us. No matter what's happened in our past, we can develop ability to become more secure and confident in the present moment, and then each present moment that comes along in time. We're faced with difficulties. We're cognizant not to add to the narrative from prior difficulties. We don't want to heap on. It's like when we get in an argument with someone we're close to, we start to just reach into the past and every hurt and every problem we've felt with that person, we just pile it on. When we do that to ourselves too, and that doesn't help. We want to be mindful and we want to use mental discipline to disengage from negative thought patterns. With regulating, we want to look at calm, motivation, and intimacy. Calmness. This is a relaxed, centered sense of well-being. And we want to try to maintain calm even in the face of worry and fear and alarm, when emotions of anger and irritation, even rage come up, when there's helplessness and futility. We want to have calm as a place we want to come back to. There is a calm place that we can come back to. And with practice, we can establish this calm place and we can come back to it even as we understand that maybe there's a reason to be fearful or a reason to be angry. But we're not going to develop as a human being if we remain in the fear, worry, anger, and helplessness. So we want to develop our ability to self-regulate. We want to really, this is the parasympathetic nervous system, the rest and digest. We want to learn to have conscious control of our unconscious activities. And this is where the pursuit of what we call biofeedback, which came into practice in the 70s and 80s, and it sort of had a high point and not talked about so much as biofeedback, but it's this ability to have conscious control of our unconscious. And we can do this, and the first place to start is with the breath. Now we have ways to help restore calm, and this is how we practice and what the experience we can draw on. And things like yoga and Tai Chi and Qigong, which is related to Tai Chi. It's a breathing exercise from China. Time in nature, vitamin N, is very good for restoring calm. Either walking in the garden or certainly getting your hands in the dirt. There's nothing I found for myself better than having my hands in the dirt. Singing, dancing, and other forms of movement help restore calm. Our routine activities, maybe it's vacuuming, maybe it's cleaning the windows. But if we do these things with mindfulness and not resentment, we can actually help restore calm. And actually this falling back into something that we're familiar with helps restore calm. And rationality, where we take a fear and we throw oil on the fire of fear. So with rationality, we can see that threats seem bigger than our resources, but we can bring ourselves through calm through rationality. So fear arises when threats seem bigger than our resources, and through rationality, we recognize that we have the resources to deal with the situation. I wanted to talk about massage for a minute because this is one of the most calming things. Now, it's just relaxation more than mindfulness, but I want to put it into a broader context, and the context I want to put it into, that I don't think massage should be viewed as a luxury. And it doesn't have to be a professional spa massage. It can be a family process. Massage can be learned in many different ways. Certainly massage school is one of the best ways, or being mentored in massage. But now with things like YouTube and videos and all the basic massage, and you don't have to feel like you're the best masseuse in the world. But massage is really important because even for ourselves, if you were to touch your shoulder right now, there's probably a few tender spots there. And we go, oh, that's just a tender spot. But when you bring the awareness and knowledge of energy medicine, biofield ideas, you have to understand that these tender spots are signs of inflammation in the tissue. And inflammation, not just causing pain, but inflammation over time will disrupt the flow of energy, when you want to call this chi or prana, and it also disrupts the flow of blood, and it disrupts the cell's ability to rid itself of metabolic ash, which actually contributes to the inflammation. And over time, this disruption to the flow of energy and neurological energy in the body, or neurologic processes in the body, actually will become damage to the organs themselves. You know, chronic disease, we don't catch chronic disease. It's a persistent degradation of the physiology and the psychology of the being, which leads to these kinds of organ problems. And I really see that massage can be a vital component of preventative medicine. And there's a variety of types of massage. It's really which is best for you. It's the one that you do, the one that you follow through on and get. And motivation, what gets us to do what we want, what we know is good for us. So this is the process that initiates, guides, and maintains our goal-oriented behavior, our intentions. Motivation is the driving force behind our actions. And even in the face of challenges, we want to be motivated to pursue opportunities and goals. Now, our brains have a fundamental motivational circuit, and it's based on dopamine. And this plays a vital role in how happy we feel. It affects our movement, our memory, and our focus. Dopamine. Now, what is dopamine? Dopamine is a type of neurotransmitter. Our bodies make it. As you'll see in a minute, we can actually help that happen. We make it, our nervous system uses it to send messages between nerve cells in the brain and throughout the body. And we can train the motivational circuit by increasing the association between rewards and whatever we seek to motivate ourselves towards. Now, a lot of us are dopamine deficient, and there's ways to increase it. And this, I think, was some really important holistic information I want to share. One way is to make sure we eat protein. I don't think there's anything wrong with being a vegan or anything like that, as long as protein needs are met. And you can build enough protein being a vegan, especially with new technology in the food industry, the positive aspects, protein, but being protein deficient. And another part of that is our immune systems need protein. So don't diminish your protein intake or denigrate how important protein is. Saturated fats actually block dopamine and neurological functioning. So we want to stay away from saturated fats. And this would be in animal fat and butter, palm oil and coconut oil. These can disrupt dopamine signaling in the brain when consumed in large quantities. Probiotics. Now, probiotics are really very, very important. The probiotics have leaked into the Western medical model. Thankfully, now it's being recommended by gastroenterologists and dietitians and nutritionists. I think it's quite well known. There's definitely different qualities of probiotics. We talk about prebiotics now, which actually feed the probiotics. Probiotics are available in foods, especially fermented foods. So really focus on keeping your probiotics up. Now, this is something in researching for our talk tonight that I came across, which is something called velvet beans. This is a legume. It's a tropical legume. Latin is Dopa mucuna. You can get it in supplement form. You can go on Amazon right now and get it. This is an amazing source of dopamine. It's not a bean I think that you're going to eat in a burrito or crushed like a hummus, but it's a supplement that you can take. Exercise increases dopamine. Sleep increases dopamine. And I want to add one other thing about sleep, which is something that's only been discovered in recent years, is something called lymphatics. Now, there's a whole lecture on lymphatics I'd love to share with you sometime, but know that what lymphatics is, it's the way the brain gets rid of metabolic ash from the millions of cells that die off in the brain every day from the dynamic functioning of our brains. When we sleep, our brain actually changes structure. Conduits open up so the brain can drain into the lymphatic system. That's where you see the lymphatics in the name. So sleep is important in a lot of ways, but one of the things it's how it revitalizes the brain and preserves our brain's health. Dementia and Alzheimer's are often being seen now as a lymphatics issue where the brain's not able to rid itself, whether it's taurines or these that have been identified. So sleep is extremely important. It's one of the sweetest things we get to do. We get to dream. Listening to music, interesting, it's preferably without lyrics. Lyrics really engages our minds in a way, like in a cognitive way, where music actually enters our system and helps with flow. And so music is really important, can be very helpful for dopamine increase. Certainly meditation, sunlight, exposing our body to sunlight. That's one of the reasons we take supplemental D3, because most of us don't get enough sunlight and we're under artificial light or the blue screens of our computers. And supplements are a way to help and with creating more dopamine. Iron, niacin, folate, and vitamin B6. I'll go into a little detail about these right now. Not all iron we know where we can get, but foods that increase folate are going to be the brassicas. The broccoli, Brussels sprouts, leafy greens, spinach isn't a brassica, arugula is, peas, chickpeas, and kidney beans, liver. If you're going to eat liver, I mean, it used to be a very popular food. I grew up eating, it was very common. You hardly see it now, but certainly try to get liver from an organically grown animal. And you can get liver as a supplement if you don't feel like eating liver, which I don't anymore. We can increase niacin with foods. Again, liver is one of the ones there. White meat of chicken and tuna and turkey, salmon, anchovies, pork, ground beef, peanuts. Peanuts are an interesting food because they're not a nut. They're a little hard to digest for many people. Peanuts are actually a legume, which really, ideally they're boiled before we eat them, but they don't taste as delicious. So it's a trade-off there a little bit. The wonderful avocado, brown rice, whole wheat's a good source of niacin. The mushrooms, boy, we could talk about mushrooms all night. A great food. Mushrooms are incredibly important for our immunity and our health. Peas and potatoes. B6 foods, milk, ricotta, salmon, tuna, eggs, liver shows up again, beef, carrots. These are just samples of foods to consider. If you don't eat any of these, think about bringing them into your diet, especially if you feel like your mood can be use a little bit of enhancing. Sweet potato, peas, banana, chickpeas, cereals, but not refined grains, and again, avocado. And some supplements to boost moods. A lot of this is based on research. It's not just, supposition. Again, probiotics, very important. Most of us, because we've been given antibiotics before we had a choice, repopulating our body with probiotics and continually doing, and maybe switching brands of probiotics isn't a bad idea at all. This is the velvet bean number 2, the Mucona. Ginkgo is it's an ancient tree. It's one of the most ancient trees we have on Earth. They go back a quarter of a billion years, unchanging. And they're really very good for mood. Curcumin, this is the active ingredient in turmeric. It's available in foods, but it really is a supplement. You're going to get a higher dose of that. It's also very anti-inflammatory. It helps relieve pain. Oregano oil, supplemental magnesium. It comes in a variety of forms that you can take. Green tea is a good one for mood boosting. I've mentioned vitamin D3. Vitamin D3, besides helping with moods, it actually helps rid our body of stress hormones. Fish oils, krill oil is a good one. It's an inexpensive way of boosting moods. It also helps balance the LDL, HDL in our body. Caffeine in moderation actually can be very valuable. We have to gauge for ourselves how much caffeine affects our blood sugar balance, if it makes it irritable or not. But caffeine definitely has some benefits. It shouldn't be considered totally negative by any means. Ginseng, people used to think it's in the West, it came in as a coffee substitute. People thought it was used for energy. In traditional Chinese herbal medicine, actually what ginseng does is help create focus so that all the things in the periphery aren't draining our energy. And so ginseng helps us focus. Actually, it was considered to be used, helpful for meditation. And berberine is a supplement. You're not going to find berberine in foods. It comes from sources that aren't really food sources, but it's really very valuable for helping with blood sugar and insulin levels. And the relation between insulin and moods is a really important and growing understanding we have. It also helps with the triglyceride and cholesterol levels. So these are supplements to consider. You might certainly not take all of them all the time, but talk to a nutritionist, see what works for you. But these are ideas to consider. Okay, back to our follow through here on our graphs. Intimacy. Intimacy is very important because we're social beings, humans, and we thrive on close personal relationships. I think this became increasingly clear during pandemic. And this intimacy rests on a foundation of personal autonomy. You know who you are, what makes you feel comfortable, what makes you feel good. Intimacy involves empathy, the ability to feel the other, compassion, kindness. And we can see it as a unilateral virtue in relationships. You want to focus on your own actions and not on the actions and behaviors of the other. As long as we're comfortable in ourselves, we're open for the possibility of intimacy. It's not creating expectations of the other, because expectations often lead to disappointment. So we want to be rooted in ourselves, and that will help build our capacity to experience intimacy. Now, intimacy is often considered mostly around physical intimacy, but there's really 4 types. There's experiential intimacy, when we bond with people during leisure activities, when we sync up, we work in teamwork. Emotional intimacy is when we feel safe. This is so important to feel safe. We want to share our feelings with each other, even uncomfortable ones. Intellectual intimacy. Boy, we need a heavy dose of this now in our culture, because this is where we feel comfortable sharing ideas and opinions, even when there's disagreement. Because if there's mutual respect, and if you're grounded within yourself, someone can have a different idea about something, and it doesn't have to be an argument. And having ideas that don't really necessarily fit into what your preconceived notions are helps us learn and helps us grow as individuals. And then certainly physical intimacy, but it's not necessarily limited to sexual activity, but it's feeling safe with touch, with being touched, with your own intelligent touch. Hugging. How much did we miss hugging? We know as a culture, we certainly got to a place where people felt comfortable. Men felt comfortable hugging other men in public. Athletes did it, and the COVID really took the steam out of that, the wind out of the sail. But it's extremely important, and hopefully we can get back to that. I think we recognize how the virus is transmitted now, and it's not. We can go back to hugging and having physical intimacy, I think. Under relating, we're going to think about courage and aspiration and generosity. So courage is a mental or moral strength to venture forth, to persevere, and withstand danger, fear, or difficulty. We can differentiate 3 types of courage. There's try courage, where we take initiative in action. We step up, we try new things. We're even willing to make mistakes. There's trust courage. This involves resisting the temptation to control other people. It's not about action. It involves inaction, or letting go of the need to control. And the tell courage is what we have to tell the truth. And regardless of how difficult the truth may be for others to hear or for ourselves to either say. But if we're open to all these types of courage, our ability to exhibit courage in all circumstances will grow, and we'll have more resilience. So we have moral courage, intellectual courage, disciplined courage, and empathic courage. Moral courage is we take action for moral reasons, despite risk, despite the fear of consequences. But it does involve deliberation or careful thought. We don't want to just be stimulus response. We want to be, and this is one reason meditation is so good, because we can take a step back and observe before we speak out. Intellectual courage is the consciousness of the need to face and fairly address ideas, beliefs, or viewpoints, which we might have strong negative emotions about. We might not have given a serious hearing, but we have the courage, the integrity, the independence, the perseverance, the empathy, the humility, and the confidence in reason and being fair-minded. Disciplined courage, we can be reflective, strategic, focused in the face of constant distractions and opposition. And we want to focus on the greater good, what's morally based. And empathic courage is to believe you're right, but still work to understand the thoughts and feelings of those you disagree with. And that's a tough one, to be empathic and to be open and to be respectful of the other. Aspiration is a hope or an ambition of achieving something. We want to clear about what you enjoy, what you're talented at, what you care about, and be willing to fail. The more we're willing to fail and take risks, the more we're likely we will succeed. Generosity. This is the quality of being kind and being generous. It's the essence of altruism. It's the giving without expecting anything in return. And an aspect of generosity is even to give without the receiver even knowing who is giving. That's the highest form, actually. And we want to be generous to ourselves. And this involves forgiving ourselves and taking responsibility and actually feeling appropriate remorse and making amends. Whew. Okay, let's take a breath. And I congratulate you if you're still with me. I want to talk about stress and eustress. Stress, we hear that word all the time. Eustress is a word we don't hear a lot, but eustress is the polar opposite of stress. Clearly, we can't avoid stress completely. It's built in. In fact, one reason we still have survived as a species is because we developed a stress response. It was a survival mechanism. So we're not going to control stress. We can't control necessarily we can affect our response to it. But if there's stress, we're going to have adrenaline released. We're going to have, especially if there's real threat, we're going to see blood rush out of the stomach into the periphery. We're going to see hormonal changes. We're going to see a lot of changes. But as over the course of a whole life, or even just day to day, we want to bring into our life and develop and embrace eustress practices. And again, this is not just an emotional it's an emotional and the physiologic opposite of stress, because the persistence of stress hormones in our body will begin to break down our organs and our tissues of our body. Besides just saying, I'm so stressed, I'm so stressed. There's actually measurable changes that occur in our body. So the stress response is whenever we are in a perceived uncomfortable condition, mental or physical, and what our body wants to do is find a way to come to homeostasis. This is the checks and balances of everything that's happening within the skin of our being. And we want to protect ourselves. We want to adopt changes. So stress then is a series of events our body follows to cope with situations where we feel threatened by. So this is, and stress is the effects of anything that threatens our homeostasis. And this is external and internal aspects. So stress involves not just the nervous system, but also the endocrine system. And this is often where a lot of the lasting damage occurs, is in the harmonious functioning of our endocrine system. So they're both physiologic and metabolic complications of stress, in addition to the emotional component. Stress affects everything about us, literally everything about us. And it's not just a situation or adverse condition, it's the way by which our body overcomes these situations. So stress isn't necessarily out there, it's what's happening inside. And that's why we want, this is general adaptation syndrome, this is how we respond to stress. There's 3 stages. I'm going to skip through this right now, but you'll have these slides. It's not the best use of our time right now, but we have known ways that we deal with stress. And these are going to be these eustress aspects. And what I want you to recognize is that eustress nurses resilience. So one of the aspects we want to identify, what are the causes of things in your life that are causing you stress? And once you identify what creates these changes in your body, and then how can we mitigate these? And then more important, and this is all goes back to this idea of building resilience, is how can we adopt eustress strategies so that we are consciously, focusedly, with intentionality, working to preserve our body from the ravages of persistent physiologic changes that occur when we feel fight or flight, when we feel that kind of stress. So these ideas of what eustress activities, they're beneficial. They actually are what are important part. As much as stress helps us survive as a species, helps us persist as a species and develop and evolve our eustress ideas. This is kind of positive stress that keeps us vital and excited about life. And it actually helps clear stress hormones, especially cortisol, from our bloodstream. And as I mentioned before, one of the things about vitamin D3 and sunlight and being outside is vitamin D3 will actually help break down excessive cortisol that's flooding through our bodies. One of the best ways to reduce stress is to develop positive attitude. And our attitude is the thing that we wake up with. And if we wake up with a negative attitude, then everything that comes our way, we're going to have a physiologic response to that's going to affect us in a deleterious way. Keep in mind that perception determines reality. Now, that's a huge subject. It deserves a talk on its own. But how we perceive the things is how we shape what's real to us. It's not an event, but in fact, it's the way you interpret an event that causes the stress. Because some things that might give us joy, we can actually see, because of harm that's happened in our life, we might feel that as a threat. So how we perceive reality determines our reality. So ways we deal with creating more eustress, healthy eating is an important part of that. And healthy eating there's a wide variety of things that are healthy because we have different body types and different demands on our body. But a low glycemic diet, which helps keep our blood sugar and insulins in good places, is really, really an important way of dealing with stress in our being. So the factors that affect the glycemic index are going to be the macronutrient content of foods and the fiber content, the types of sugar and starches. Again, sugar itself is not bad. It's refined sugar and excessive sugars. The ripeness and maturity of our foods and the quality they've been grown with, how we process, prepare, and cook foods. Actually, the physical form of the foods. Sometimes sometimes things cooked. It depends on our physiology again, more or less. How the form of the food, whether raw foods or more cooked foods, how much chewing it required. We all could learn to chew more. And we want to avoid what I'm going to call anti-nutrients in food. And this is a lot of the stuff that the food industry puts into food and the chemical farmers put into our food. So these things are dangerous to our physiology. Sadly, we have hundreds of toxic chemicals in our tissues. So especially with children, the more we can get them eating organic from the get-go, the better it will be for them. Regular physical exercise. I think some exercise every day is very advisable rather than being a weekend warrior. And it doesn't have to be a huge amount of time, but usually something to help your body sweat and to get yourself a little out of breath. I think those are two indicators of physical exercise affecting stress hormones in our body. Exercise helps us release serotonin and endorphins, and these help with moods. And the better our mood is, the more resilient we're going to be. It lowers cholesterol. Exercise boosts the immune system. And it certainly helps improve the functions of the heart and lungs and the movement of blood throughout our body, blood and lymph throughout our body. Meditation and yoga, I know I'm being repetitive with this, but they can be so important into our life. They're just really hard. It's hard to exaggerate, and it doesn't have to be yoga. It can be really just exercise itself. But the more mindful we are, and that's why yoga is and Tai Chi are so good, because built into the DNA of these traditions is mindfulness. And the more mindfulness we are in our exercise and our activities, the more beneficial they're going to be. A good social network is an important part of eustress. When we talk to other people, it takes our minds not off of our own problems, but oftentimes solutions come. Our intuition gets activated and solutions come. And there's no downside to having a good social network. Of course, boundaries are important, but you need boundaries in a social network, but you need the social network too. Now, I've talked about Qigong a little bit, and I want to actually, we're going to work our way to just doing a Qigong exercise to finish up and answer some questions. So Qigong is a system of coordinated body postures and movement. This is very dear to me because it's embedded in Chinese medicine, which has been my basic career and practice the last 40 years. And it's used for the purpose of health and spirituality. And it's also used in martial arts training because it has a meditative quality and a grounding and a centering quality. Now, in the Chinese tradition, there's something called the 6 healing sounds, the Liu Zhu Zhui. And this actually has been talked about since around 420 to 589 AD. Not just talked about, it was in a book dating back that far. And this is where we combine sound with movement to enhance health and increase awareness and consciousness. And this is, so the original 6 healing sounds was just sound. Some centuries later, exercises were added to that. So we had the meditative sounds and the exercises. And we know now with the more of our aspects of our being that we combine it in an activity, the more beneficial it'll be for us. So the triple warmer, the sanjiao, this is an important part of traditional Chinese medicine. It's not so well known. It's actually a unique aspect of Chinese medicine. It's an integrative energy. Again, this is a whole subject for another lecture, another time. But what I want to do, it's an integrative energy, and that's why I wanted to present it and share it with you, because this helps integrate all the energies of the 5 elements and the organs and the energy pathways, the meridians associated with it. And I want to show you how simple it is to incorporate some Qigong into your life. Now, the healing sound we're going to use is a sound just he. Each of the 5 elements in Chinese philosophy, medical philosophy, are given a key. This is actually the key of G. With the triple warmer, I want you to consider the possibility of bringing in balance, integrity, harmony, calmness, and fluidity, because one of the things the triple warmer does is it helps regulate water in the various forms we find in our body. We want to let go of sluggishness and congestion and stagnation, but not just stagnation in the physical part of our being, but stagnation in our mental aspect too. And we want to affirm you are appropriate, you are fluid, and you are harmonious. So it looks like this. We're going to bring our palms just in front of the area below our navel, palm sides up. And we're going to breathe in. You can relax your knees a little bit and feel yourself grounded. And so I'm going to breathe in. We're all going to breathe in together, coming up, breath in. And when we reach the throat area, we're going to reverse the palms. We're going to press down as if there's a little resistance. And we're going to say the sound, Let's do this 2 more times. Breathe into your belly. Breath in, rotate, press down, and 1 more time. Breath in. As you breathe out with he this time, let your eyes close. Put your palms on your lower abdomen and just feel the breath move in and out. And know that you are resilient You are flexible. You are strong. You are grounded. You have potential for greatness. And you purposely do things that are good for you. And you can open your eyes. Just one other aspect, because I love to share Chinese herbal medicine too. There's a formula, a wonderful formula called Guptong, and it restores the spleen. Its name is Restore the Spleen Decoction. This is a great formula for worry, too much excessive worry. It's a great formula for learning, and it's a great formula for sleep. It's a very interesting formula that has a variety of actions. It helps with digestion too. It influences thought, which is our capacity for thinking, studying, concentrating, focusing, and memorizing. We recommend this to students a lot because it helps diminish worry and helps with concentration. It's just a marvelous formula. And it helps with sleep by nourishing the heart blood, and which is important for cognitive functioning and quality of sleep. Those of you who might like specifics, this is the ingredients. It's a fairly complex formula, which some Chinese formulas are, but each of the aspects of the formula has a role to create this synergistic dynamic benefit. It's available on Amazon or a variety of sites. It's a safe formula to take, especially within moderation, but it's good. And I wanted to just share some of the wisdom of the tradition that I love. And this is a really good formula, and it fits directly into what we're talking about here. And that's about all I have to say tonight. I really appreciate you joining us. And if there's any questions, Kiara will come back on and we can. You there?
We have many questions. So the first question is, let me see, if we could have all the questions in Q&A, it will help a lot, because in the Q&A I can separate them. In the chat sometimes they get lost. So do you cover the vagus nerve at all?
I didn't in this talk per se, but it's extremely important. It's part of the, I did talk about the brain-gut axis, and that is the vagus nerve, how moods affect our digestion, digestion affects our mood. The vagus nerve comes out, it's a cranial nerve, it innervates all the major organs. It's something I love to talk about. I didn't really have time into there, but it's definitely, harmonization of the vagus nerve is an important part of health and resilience. A couple of small things that are good for the vagus nerve are singing and humming.
How interesting.
Humming is a good one for helping the vagus nerve. Keeping our necks relaxed is important, and most of us have some impingement along the vagus nerve coming out of the cranium. So but whoever brought that up, I agree. It's a very important.
It's a very important, I agree too. Do you have a recommendation on DHEA?
What, please?
Do you have a recommendation on DHEA?
DHA is used to strengthen the adrenals. If you're very, very depleted, it's something to consider using, but I wouldn't recommend using it without also considering how can I increase general eustress activities in my body, or identifying the things that are causing you to have a constant stress reaction. So it's you don't want to just keep supplementing and keep having damage occurring to your body. But DHA definitely has value. DHEA.
Makes sense. What do you think about using algae oil in lieu of fish oil? Are there DHA, EPA / other benefits rather equal and utilized by the body equally well from what you understand?
I think that person has a little more awareness than I in that field. It was algae oil, was that?
Algae oil in lieu of fish oil.
For people who are vegan, that's definitely a good substitution. That's a very good substitution. And krill oil, in a way, it's come from whale, but it's because they eat so much algae.
That's true. And
It's
they're
just one,
found much lower
it's a more
down.
original source, yeah.
Exactly. All right, next question. With massage, after how many 1 hour sessions per week or month would you consider it antithetical to the health of blood, lymph, and nerve activation?
Well, I think that probably at least once a month would be recommended. Um, especially when I was living and studying body work in Thailand, I was getting about 3 hours of body work a day, both between class and tutorial. It wasn't too much, but it's not practical. Of course, in Thailand, when I would go to get body work, it was like $3 an hour, US an hour. You know, it's our pricing's a little different here. So once a month, I would say would be minimal. Once a week is better, depending on what's happening in your life more. Developing massage skills so that you can trade, so it's not always writing a check or flashing a credit card, I think was helpful. But it's hard to say too much, what's too much, but I think there is a minimal that I recommend.
And so the second half of that question is, if acupuncture is received weekly, once or twice a week, in addition, how many days or hours would acupuncture and massage sessions be separated from each other?
I don't think they necessarily have to be separated from each other. I often will end, not with a full body massage, but I'll often end treatments I give with a little spot massage. I don't think that they're contraindicated to each other, especially the Asian forms of body work like Tui Na and Shiatsu are literally acupuncture without needles in many ways. So there's a synergy there. So I don't think you wouldn't diminish the acupuncture with massage. I don't think you would diminish the massage with acupuncture.
Thank you. So next question. With or after an addiction period, aside from your mentions on dopamine, are there additional considerations to ensure neurotransmitters heal properly?
Let me have you repeat that one, please.
Okay. With or after an addiction period,
With
aside from
addiction?
addiction, a
Uh-huh.
period of addiction.
Okay.
So with or after a period of addiction, aside from what you mentioned about dopamine, are there other additional considerations to support neurotransmitters? I think that basically that's the
Yeah.
question.
I would say there's certainly all these dietary things. I would really recommend focused approaches to cleansing the liver is an important part of that. And in herbal and natural medicine, we have approaches that can be even some home therapies, which can be very beneficial for liver cleansing. One of the main ones is the use of external castor oil poultices. I'd highly recommend who's ever asking that to research that. There are herbs like milk thistle, which are shown to be very helpful. Chrysanthemum, there are protocols that are very helpful. Interestingly, the ancient practice of cupping, which has become very prevalent and very common and known now, cupping right over the liver helps invigorate the liver, helps open it. But do know that the liver can regenerate. It has the tremendous capacity to regenerate, but the liver, it's the kidney somewhat, but the liver is the organ that takes the most abuse. And there is correlation in Chinese medicine. For instance, the pathway of the liver meridian comes to the crown of the head, the internal pathway. So we recognize that there's this connection. So I think those can be very, very important. Also keep in mind, back to the vagus nerve and the brain gut axis, serotonin is primarily produced in the gut, in nerve endings in the gut. It's not produced in the brain hardly at all. Serotonin, because people use serotonin uptake inhibitors for depression, there's a common confusion that that the brain is the place that serotonin is being produced, but it's not. It's in the gut. So the health of the gut is very important for rejuvenating the body after addiction.
Next question. Are transgenerational trauma and trauma experience within one's lifetime, can they be treated? And if so, are they treated differently? So transgenerational trauma versus trauma.
I mean, that's a question I think more for people that work in the spiritual psychic realm and with ancestors. Um, but I think that what we see, besides the metaphysical component of that question, that if the transgenerational trauma still exists, there's probably neural pathways that exist also. If the mind keeps returning to that, because you haven't experienced that per se, but it's somehow in your, let's say your DNA or your karmic body. Um, but there's probably going to be some neural pathway that could be identified, and the technology might come up where if you're experiencing that part of your brain might light up. But what we want to do again is to create new neural pathways, and that I think we have the potential to do that. I think it's going to be a similar approach. We have seen research in psychedelics, the monitored use of psychedelics for post-traumatic stress in this lifetime or in previous lifetimes. But I think we're getting closer to the ability to track change at a very deep personal level and karmic and intergenerational level.
Feels like it. Thank you. So next question. On the subject of courage, what can one do if they're very functional, psychologically and physically, etc., but they're filled with fear and have difficulty making decisions in life? What are the first steps that are constructive to rebuilding trust in the present moment with others so that we can afford ourselves the opportunities to be courageous? You have the most amazing questions, I have to tell you.
Who's ever written that question, I admire your self-awareness. Speaking as a doctor of Chinese medicine, not as a psychologist, but what we would focus on is strengthening what we call the yuan qi. This is like the deepest qi energy of the body. And it's housed in what we call the Ming Man and the kidneys. Now, interesting, the Ming Man, this point, it's on the midline of the spine at L2, L3. In the embryologic development of the fetus, this is the first point that is noted in the development of the spine. And this is where the original fire is that feeds the fire of the kidneys. And in our model, the kidneys are the root of courage. So, the psychological component of that is worthy of books. And I think the Chinese medicine is. Now, with that in mind, there are ways to, and I'm not talking necessarily about the filtration function of the kidneys, and it's partly the adrenal. The adrenals just sit on top of the kidneys. So in a way, when we talk about the kidneys in Chinese medicine, we're talking about the physiologic ability to cleanse the fluids of the body, but also this dynamic of the adrenal glands and the adrenaline. We can strengthen the kidneys through herbal medicine, and there is an external technique called moxibustion, where we actually push yang. We push yang, which nurses yuan, into the body through this. It's a thermal technique. It's a focused use of Artemisia vulgaris. It's not ingested, it's external, but we're able to add nourish the fire of the kidneys. And this helps create more strength and more courage. Now, again, it's not a one treatment deal, especially if it's the same question about intergenerational, but it's possible. Qigong, there are definitely Qigong exercises to enhance kidney strength. Acupuncture is used, but the moxibustion, I think, is stronger in herbal formulas. Just as an offhand, I thought with this, there's more cooked foods now. In ancient times, not even that ancient, you would be advised to eat kidney. Organ meats were eaten. They're still eaten in parts of the world, but they are available in supplementation forms. There's a company, Standard Processing, based in somewhere in Minneapolis area, that has very high level protomorphogens, which are supplements made from organs of consciously raised animals. So those are some of the ideas to consider. But again, it's a step-by-step process. It's going to happen over time. There's going to be small advances. There'll probably be some setbacks. But with the psychology of possibility, if you can start to envision yourself as a more courageous person and start to affirm that and express gratitude towards that, little by little by little, change will occur and the benefit can grow.
I
But
think when people start to feel different, and even it's
embodiment of
one
it.
step in at a time, then the mind begins to believe that there can be difference. And so it's a
Absolutely.
bi-directional um, change,
It's a
so to
loop.
speak. It's a loop,
The feedback
absolutely. And
loop.
I,
Absolutely.
I kind of found that in things that I've read and my own experience, if I may, yoga seems to help a lot, because there's movement and it's learning the postures and it's about trusting the body again. So there again, even though it's a kind of a mind-body trusting, it supports movement towards, plus obviously all the other things that you've suggested. So that's been my experience anyway.
Yep. And I think that's where exercise, our Western idea of exercise is very good in building big muscles and feeling like you're invincible. But unless there's mindfulness with that and recognition of, are you doing it for just physical beauty or attractiveness, or are you doing it for developing a deeper evolutionary sense of yourself and your possibility?
Do you think that the body responds differently when you do have the awareness and the intention of what you're trying to
Yeah,
do?
I think
Because it's
intentionality.
alive, it's
Yeah,
dynamic. So you would expect.
yeah, I think
Interesting.
intentionality is very, very important in that regard.
Yes, I agree. Thank you. Next question. As a result of stress poorly managed over many years or decades, what damages to the immune, nervous, endocrine, other affected systems would you say are reversible? And which ones may not be if we don't apply beneficial interventions? It's a very long question. Would
Well,
you
if you
like me
don't
to
apply
repeat?
beneficial in over a long period of times, that's where we see disease and decline occur. I think a day to day, the one of the biggest negative dynamics is in insulin balance. And whether it's going to be hypoglycemic over time, developing into metabolic disease, metabolic syndrome, I mean, they call it more diabetes. Um, that's an area of grave concern, and it really needs to be. And we see this happening more and more and more in the culture, in the society. Um, it can be not so much reversed, but we can learn this intermittent fasting that's become more and more well known seems to create dramatic benefit for people. But boy, it takes discipline. You have to really believe and go through probably some hard times along the way. But intermittent fasting is something to really, really consider. Um, and then really purposely working on cleansing of the tissue of the body, feeding the tissue with as healthy of foods and supplements as possible. Really developing a regimen of positive behaviors, because it ain't going to just happen on its own, especially if it's a long-term process. We really have to be intentional, um, and it's an act of self-love.
This is very true. Very, very true.
It's something we haven't mentioned, but I want to, because I'm looking at
Please do.
is how important pets and animals are.
Oh,
I didn't bring it up at all, but uh, a close relationship with a pet is a very eustress activity, and highly recommended. Uh,
there's research to show that people with Alzheimer's, when they were with their pets, they actually fared better. And when they went into some care and they couldn't bring their pets, they deteriorated very, very quickly. So that's a very good point,
yep.
and it's an important one to mention.
Some researchers in artificial intelligence are developing robotic pets. Now,
Really?
there's a lot of reason to feel that that's like, but at the same time, someone with Alzheimer or dementia, they can relate to a robotic pet, and research has shown they really develop relationships. And you don't have to feed them, you don't have to pick up poop or clean litter. I mean, and the technology is getting so that these robotic pets have artificial intelligence and start relating, responding, and they see with observation that the human beings start to respond to them too. So there's, I'm not against technology by any means, excessive, so there are some advances that are coming in that.
I think I
But
still
really,
like my
if you're
warm.
young enough to take care of a pet, take care of a pet. You might not want a horse in your backyard.
Well, no, and I kind of think I still want my warm-blooded
Well,
animal
sure, but
personality,
yeah.
But I understand if
Yeah,
someone has
but we're talking
Alzheimer's, it's
the
different.
statistics on dementia and Alzheimer's.
Yes, and I can understand if there's difficulty in looking after the animal, and that welfare on both sides is important. So I
Yeah.
can understand how that could be useful. Absolutely. That's very interesting. Thank you. So, next question. It seems infrared saunas are recommended to relax and detox and are regarded by many doctors as universally useful for daily use. What is your opinion on this? And do you think daily use or any use would be contraindicated for those that naturally run very hot most of the time or have heat conditions?
Um, I think the basic issue, does this infrared or far infrared?
It's infrared, but if you'd
Yeah.
like to speak to both of them,
Yeah.
that's
Well,
that's fine.
I think the main physiologic issue there is sweating. And sweating is one of the most important dynamic physiologic functions we have. Our skin is our largest organ of excretion and detoxification. For some reason here in America, we've made sweating into a bad or a stinky thing. A lot of times we don't, most people don't sweat. I know for myself, and I think that people who exercise recognize that what we call the runner's high or the endorphin release, it happens when we start to sweat. You might, start your breathing, but when the sweat begins, the physiology changes. Now, with that in mind, so it's like if you do infrared or any kind of regular sweating, we want to think about also replacing minerals because we do lose some minerals. And the good way to replace minerals is with a good diet. A diverse diet of things grown in mineral-rich soils. So that's a part of it. Minerals, you could take mineral supplements. There's been quite a renaissance in salts of late. Different sea salts, Himalayan pink salt became a darling of Hollywood and it got out in the culture. But there's salts that are being mined in different areas. Just recently, I encountered something they're calling green salt. It's made from a plant that grows in salty marshes. And it's sort of like a kelpish sort of salt, but it's very low in sodium, but high in minerals. So I've sort of gone off the subject. So as far as every day, it depends. If you do a sweat sauna every day and you feel wiped out, you're doing it too much. But if you feel an exhilaration from it, and you feel like your body's cleansing and your muscles are less sore and your joints don't pop as much and you wake up with a sense of optimism, there's probably some value to that. You want to make sure you hydrate and replace minerals, but there's value to that. So that's an infrared. Now, far infrared's a different story. It's on the total other end of the light spectrum. And there are far infrared booths and then pads where they run electricity through crystals. And this actually warms the body from the inside out. And there's therapeutic benefit of that with the lymphatic movement in the body and positive health things. Now, for people who run hot all the time, it depends. If you stay too hot after sweating, that's another issue. And some people like that, a cooling diet would be recommended. And there are in the Chinese medicine, there are foods that are a bit more yin, which are going to be more in the cooling area. And you want to avoid foods that create too much heat. And that's going to be, especially fried foods create heat and too much in the oils, especially any kind of bad oils, but healthy oils. So a lot of it is about seeking balance. And certainly as we see, some people are hot, some people are cold. There's tremendous diversity, and what's good for me is not necessarily good for you as far as foods go, especially in supplementation.
Thank you. How about frequency therapy as a microcurrent to calm the brain? What do you think?
It's becoming there's this Healy device. There's a lot of devices that
Mhm.
are coming out. Um, as you know, Jarman, maybe the audience, but I'm very into sound healing, the effect of sound on the brain. I prefer using it through music rather than TikTok frequency devices. Um, but people are getting value from those. I think neuroscience and studies are showing benefit for that. So I think there's a big positive in that. And I think that the conscious use of sound to raise consciousness and to affect eustress is very valid, very important.
I agree. I like sound. It's fun. It
It's
yes,
it's at the foundation of our universe.
it
Sound.
is absolutely harmonics, right?
Yes.
So absolutely. So we have a comment. Thank you so much. It's a lot of research and explaining one short hour. Excellent. Let us know your office location. So I think this lady found your office location. I also suggested she email you. So
Yeah, I have my email on here.
yes, you do.
Um, I'm not, I'm somewhat retired from clinical practice. I do a little bit, but I work in a really wonderful group practice part-time, and there's some great practitioners. So I might would refer, but there are wonderful practitioners all over now, I'm happy to say, having been involved in the education aspect for a number of years. But I'm got one foot out to pasture now, so to speak. But
I
I
like
love
that
doing
one
this
foot
kind
out
of
the pasture.
I've segued into some other things now. Um, but I still love clinical practice. I still do it, but it's COVID really knocked the socks off of a lot of that for me.
Well, next question. You mentioned the gut brain relationship. Are there things to do if one just suffered a concussion, a head trauma to prevent immediate or long term damage?
I would recommend what's known as cranial sacral therapy. And if you're in San Diego, there's a lot of good practitioners. I would recommend, if you're not, to Google your neighborhood, area. There's a group, the Upledger Foundation has been a training ground for this. But what we find is that the skull is not like solid, like a rock. The skull is the plates of the skull, like the continents of the earth, have slight, subtle movements. And if there's been trauma to the brain, to the skull, there's bound to be disruption in the cerebral spinal fluid movement in the brain blood barrier. So I would highly recommend cranial sacral work. There is a subspecialty in Chinese acupuncture of scalp acupuncture, which has been shown to be very beneficial. It's not widely practiced. There are specialists in it. Scalp acupuncture, where we thread needles. It doesn't go into the brain, but it goes into the like the neurological feeding ground toward superficial to the brain. And this is very commonly used for stroke rehabilitation and brain trauma. Um, it's interesting, it hasn't caught on so much here in America. I was in 1980 when I was in a hospital in Shanghai. I was in a scalp acupuncture ward. I was so excited about it. I saw and was told about miracles that were happening. Um, and I came back with a lot of enthusiasm, but and we've had scalp acupuncture teachers, but you don't see it in rehabilitation, stroke rehabilitation wards. And so any acupuncture students or practitioners are listening, think about getting into scalp work, because we might see its benefits with dementia and Alzheimer's too. But certainly,
Interesting.
so cranial sacral and scalp acupuncture, I'd highly recommend.
Oh, thank you. So, last questions. Could you share more about EMF exposure and any devices um, that would be able to protect ourselves effectively from EMF or any new exposures? So, any devices that create EMF as well. So, it's a double question.
I actually wear something that was supposedly, helpful for EMFs. I saw an ad and I think it's from volcanic material. Um, this is an area of exploration that's happening. I think it's a valid area. Um, I would recommend searching. I don't have any particular knowledge about what's best or not, but I do know that if we could see our reality is based on what our senses pick up. Our senses are picking up about this much of this. And if we could see all of the EMFs around us, I think we would be terrified. And I think developing some approaches. Now here in San Diego, there's an organization in Carlsbad that sells things. I mean, I put them on my refrigerator, on the computers, that supposedly diminishes EMFs. I don't know. I can't measure it. I don't have a way of measuring if it's doing that or not. But I think, especially if you feel that it's a concern, I would definitely make a positive step of looking at the technologies or the natural ways, crystals some people are using to help with shielding yourself from EMFs. For instance, the far infrared device that I use for my own health, which is something called a biomat, it's plugged into the wall. Like I wouldn't use a regular heating pad on my body daily, but this has layers to protect the body from EMF that are built into the technology of it. So more and more people are becoming cognizant of it, and I think it's worthy to keep in mind, because some of us are going to be more sensitive to that than others.
Yes. Well, we've come to the end of our questions. I'm going to open the floor for final questions, and then we're going to close. One more question. If anyone has a question, please go ahead and put it in the Q&A.
Well, you're waiting for that. I want to encourage our audience to Google the cihs.edu and learn about this amazing institute, graduate school that we're speaking to through, that are sponsoring our free talk tonight. The programs they have, the foreign programs that Chiara does here on lifelong learning. But there are academic programs, almost accredited, we hope, programs in psychology and subtle energy and the emerging scientific understanding of subtle energies. So it's quite an interesting grad school, and I'm really grateful that it exists and is here to help sponsor and foster these kinds of inquiries.
Well, thank you. I'm so glad you were able to do my speech for me. I'm pleased while we're waiting. No, it's fine. I'm really happy. Collaboration is wonderful.
That's what's
we always have that with our presentation.
Synchronicity.
And time together. So we have one question. So how can we develop a spiritual compass if we tend to lead towards atheism?
And that's an important thing about, I think, meditation, and even in the Buddhist tradition that I'm quite, and even the Taoist traditions, is they're not for or against God. It's not required belief. And this is a heavy question. I don't want to step into a minefield too much, but I think a spiritual practice and being a devotee of religion are not necessarily have to be the same. And nothing against prayer, because prayer has been shown to be dynamic and have benefit. But prayer is usually about beseeching or asking for. And meditation is not about asking for anything. It's just about awareness. And, sometimes that awareness seems to come from a higher power, whether that's, or just this global intelligence that we're surrounded by. For myself, whether it's God exists or not is not the question. Clearly there is intelligence, and we are intelligence beings, and we can be self-aware. And so fostering that intelligence and that self-awareness and our place in the world, to me, are the roots of a spiritual practice. And some people get tremendous comfort in the belief in God. It helps them deal with, some unimaginable things that happen to us as people. But I think a spiritual practice can be definitely alongside a God-based religious practice. I don't think they're antithetical to each other. And if the religious practice helps the person grow spiritually, then all the way. Again, if your religious practice makes you a better human being, I think a priori it's spiritual. And arguing about the existence of God or not doesn't further, I don't think anyone's real spiritual development or self-awareness or evolutionary potential. And I was a religion major in college.
Oh, you're many things. You wear many hats. So
But
we
thank you
have a
for everything.
comment. Of course. We have a comment. Thank you for the great presentation. It was very comprehensive, as always, Dr. Gold. So, with that said, I would like to take this opportunity to thank you, Dr. Gold, for coming this evening, for sharing your knowledge and being with us, and for this wonderful presentation, as always, and to all the participants for sharing their evening with us. And there's a survey link that we send to you automatically when this window closes. I encourage you to take the survey. And I also shared a link with the calendar of events, and I invite you to join us. Next week, we have Brian Your Rescue from the Immortality Key, his book. And so he will be with us at 11 o'clock in the morning, though. But it will be recorded, so everybody will receive it. And as Dr. Gold mentioned, at CIHS offers degrees. So if you're interested, connect with me and I can put you through to our Dean of Admissions. And we're also a 501c3, a nonprofit. So we're empowered by the generosity of individuals and corporations and foundations. So if you know of anyone who would like to illuminate humanity through science and research, education, and the public programs we offer, please connect with me. I'd be more than happy to support and help them through that. So without further ado, good night, everybody, and thank you for coming.
Thank
Good
you so
night.
much.
Bye-bye.
Bye now.